Classes coming.
Okay, gang. So, welcome to our session, a February session on AI tools to grow your business. For anybody that's attended one of our workshops before, we've run one of these in October and December. Some of this content will be strangely familiar, but I do update it based on new tools, new information, and just my own personal interest in developing, the presentation. So we'll cover the basics of what AI is. We'll look at AI politics, and then we're going to move into copy creation, SEO, and image creation. We'll take a break and we'll do a bit of Q&A. And then afterwards, we'll be using business cases. So smart objectives, instructional videos, project planning, risk management, and social media. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So our session is due to finish at 11:30 today. Now, for everybody's interest, check your toolbar. There is an AI companion that you can see I've circled over here. The idea behind the AI companion is it's just an interesting way for you to interact with the content as we progress through the session. So the way you need to do is you need to tap it on the toolbar, and then what you will find is it will pop something out to the side. It looks like this. Now, as the workshop unfolds, then there'll be more information in there. But if you've never used it before, give it a go because it's a neat little tool. So, first question to ask is our usual Zoom chat poll. What was the last thing you did with AI? I'm very interested to know which tools you really, really like. So if you can just put that into the chat, and then what I will do is I'll just gently move on, but I will come back to what you put into the chat. And I would suggest that throughout the course of the session, as you see tools that I'm using, if you've found better ones or an equivalent or alternatives, then do mention that in the chat for the benefit of everybody in this workshop. And in particular, if you can share links, that would be really useful for us. Okay, so let's talk about the basics of what AI is. So it's comprised of 6 components. So we have our raw data, such as text, images, sounds, videos. That's the material that it learns from. And this is stored in the cloud. So huge servers around the world hold all of this data. And this data needs to be processed. And we use algorithms to understand the data, sort it, sift it, categorize it, use deep learning to really understand the sentiment and the reasons behind using that particular data set. And then what comes out the back end of that is actually a language model. So things like ChatGPT, that's a language model. It's comprised of all these other 4 elements. That language model is intended to be used through an application for a specific task, such as please create me an X, please do this. And there are APIs that have been created using language models and the internet itself, so the World Wide Web, a combination of both of those things and layering on reasoning, all of that stuff together, which makes it more real. Because when it comes to language models, the language model is only as good as the data. So every time they scrape data sources, that kind of time stamps it. So most of the AI tools that you will see today are comprised of the language model, but as well as that, they augment it with real live information. So just a couple of things that have come up. ChatGPT is being used, Gemini, very good. Someone did an interview with me for their LinkedIn page. Oh, very good. So Joanna, you're using AI in Canva. Yeah, very good. And business strategy GPT, brilliant. Okay. Well, I'm going to show you an alternative tool today called Perplexity to get the same result. So I'll be interested in a compare and contrast. So there are 3 main areas of AI: machine learning, machine intelligence, and machine consciousness, otherwise known as ANI, AGI, and ASI. So thing you need to know is we're about here on this continuum, and it's worth a lot of money, billions, trillions, and quadrillions, arguably. And I'm going to show you something that I really like. I'm a visual thinker, and this is called the Gartner Hype Cycle. And this looks at different types of AI applications and where it fits on this waveform. So this waveform looks at stages. What created that initial need for innovation? When did it reach the peak of inflated expectation? When everybody thought it was brilliant? When did some realism come into place and we fell into the trough of disillusionment where there were doubts about the technical capability? overcoming the technical capability on the slope of enlightenment through to eventually the plateau of productivity, which is ultimately where full commercialization happens. And you can see that there's a scale. So for each of these different things, AI engineering, smart robots, they're on different time scales, 2 years, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 years plus to get to this point on here. And I find it absolutely fascinating, really, that, I mean, this was published in June of last year, so June 2024, and we're waiting the latest version of the Gartner Hype Cycle to actually show where AGI sits on that. I feel that that AGI, general intelligence, because everybody's talking about it, everybody wants it, it's going to be about here. It's going to save the world. It's going to do incredible things. That's a peak of inflated expectation. And then realism may well set in. So, use this for AI. Well, we've been using it for quite some time, but you might not have realized it. It's in our smartphones and it's been under development for quite some time. And although it's only really available in the last 6 months, or it's been advertised as being in the last 6 months, you can see it's been under development for quite a few years. More commonly, it's in our spam filters, fitness trackers. When we use certain online shopping tools, then there are algorithms that are making recommendations to us. We've all probably tried a chatbot on a website. Obviously, media curation, such as YouTube, such as Netflix, Disney, all of those things, they're all using algorithms to curate the content and provide to you that best list of things that you should be watching, and smart home systems. So it's actually been around for quite some time. Now, what I would draw your attention to is things like this. What Americans know about everyday use of AI in 2023, Pew Research Center. Anything in my presentation that's underlined is a link where you can read more about it. Okay, so I want to make sure that there's plenty of stuff that's going on where you can augment your understanding of it. And, a really simple thing potentially you could do is follow one of the links, go to the website, and actually you can use something like Copilot. If you're in your Microsoft Edge, open up the Copilot sidebar and start using the AI tool in there to understand more about what the website's saying. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about politics. So AI was used extensively during this last set of US elections. It was used in operations and also in providing access for voters to get good information, relevant information, fair, reasonable, balanced information. And I personally believe that this is one of the strengths of AI, is that it, in theory, is impartial and it will give you both sides of a story, which from a research point of view and validation and trust, there's a lot of benefits to actually using some of these AI tools that are in there. However, it is open to manipulation, and that's something you've got to be aware of. So there were lots of deep fakes that were created. It's been used by foreign actors to influence perceptions and voting habits. And in actual fact, a lot of the platforms have had to introduce codes of conduct and put guardrails in place to actually limit the influence of AI bots acting as human beings and engaging in conversations with people and tricking them into thinking that they're conversing with a real person when in actual fact they're not, it's a bot. And this is just a shot.
This just in, we can now call the 2024 presidential race for Joe Biden.
My fellow Americans.
Political party who was against.
This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan. Financial market.
It's used a lot. But the interesting thing here is what I'm highlighting here, which is altered or synthetic content. You're going to see more and more of this on platforms such as Google, Meta, TikTok, where when you upload your content, you have to tick the box to say whether or not it's AI generated. Well, actually, in the future, you won't even need to do that. It will automatically designate it as such. And then you can form your own opinion as to how much you trust the data based on the fact that it's synthetic content.
Are in free fall as
it's the US, but actually we've been using artificial intelligence through something called the UK Nudge Unit. Now, this was established by the Cabinet Office in 2010, so this is quite an old organisation, and it was used extensively during the COVID period. And the idea behind this is what they actually want to do is influence people to make better choices of their own interests. And there's quite an interesting example of this that's from this year, from January 2025, where the nudge unit was funded by a sum of £100,000 to influence people's perceptions over heat pumps, the myths around they're noisy, they're expensive, they don't work, all of that type of thing. But it's interesting stuff here. Read through this sort of stuff. It's used for good, but also, all of these things, it's influence. So I actually asked Perplexity, using a reasoning model, which AI tools the nudge unit uses. And it gave me quite an extensive list, which is fascinating. And one of the things about about Perplexity is these little numbers. All of these numbers relate to a live article where you can go and do more research. And this is one of the strengths I personally feel Perplexity has. Now, you can use ChatGPT and ask it, provide references and links, and it may well do that. Sometimes they're behind a paywall. But Perplexity is very good at providing validation of why it said something, and most especially with the reasoning model. And I'll show you lots of good examples of reasoning this new thing later on. So I won't get into the weeds on that. But when we look at how the EU is working with artificial intelligence, they just actually brought out some new laws about AI. And on face value, I don't like big government. However, I do like some of the things that they're introducing on this, such as banning manipulative AI, social scoring, and untargeted facial recognition. And it protects the fundamental rights and privacies of its citizens. I actually quite like that. I don't want to be under control, but I also don't want to be influenced unnecessarily. So what I actually then asked it was, well, okay, so if it's been introduced, so what are the key benefits? So benefits for citizens, enhanced protection against harmful AI, that's all good. Challenges for companies, high costs, complexity, uncertainty. So then I said to Perplexity, has this affected the main AI companies? Please summarize in a table. And it provided me a table with the big players. These are the main players in here. What the compliance element is, the challenges, and what adjustment they had to make. And this was quite telling, because if you look at Google, they had to pause their emotion recognition tools. Didn't even know they had them. That's interesting. You look at Meta, who are behind WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and others. They're trying to put a legal challenge over the emotion recognition in their virtual reality and augmented reality platforms. Who knew that? But they'd been forced to pause their AI training on user data. Now, if you didn't know this, anything that you post on Instagram, anything that you post on Facebook, anything that goes through your WhatsApp, if it's not in a private chat, if you publish it to the world without a restriction saying only to my friends, they can use that data, but not in the EU. But in the UK, we're not bound by these rules, so they can do that. And in fact, that's part of the reason why Meta were able to develop some free AI language models called Llama by using all of your data. So just be mindful of that fact that you are the product, I think the phrase is. So let's look at some uses of AI. And in particular, we're going to first of all look at how we create copy using words. So I asked a tool, let's generate some high quality content from blog posts and social media to boost our productivity, and give me 3 tools. And he went, okay, well, try Writer, try Perplexity, try ChatGPT. So we're going to have a look at some examples of using these particular tools today. I'm sure you're all very familiar with these. So here's my first prompt. I own a microbrewery in Oxford. Some information about how old we are and what we're passionate about. And I want to create a simple flyer to put through people's letterboxes. Can you give me some nice words? This is about as basic prompt as you could put into one of these tools. So if we put that into Writer, and you can see I put the link up there so you can go and try this for yourself, create a new document, choose what this is. I want to use US English. There's no UK English. I want to make it convincing. I want to make this a product description. You can see there are lots and lots of different styles, use cases for this. It's brilliant. If you're somebody who's interested in SEO, then you can actually create copy that's SEO compliant. It then says, okay, got all of that information. give me the basic information. So I pasted in the prompt. I said, give me 2 variants and optimize it for creativity. Hit the write for me button, and it produced 2 versions. This one, there's a line there, another version. Nice and simple. You can do that with ChatGPT. However, what I really like about this is you can go back into these settings and change it in real time, and then it starts to redo it. Whereas if you're trying to do this in ChatGPT, it gives you the answer, then you've got to put another prompt in there, and you don't have quite so much control over it. So try it. It's free, obviously, for a short period of time, and then you'll have to pay for it. But it comes highly recommended. Now, before I show you about ChatGPT, just want to talk to you about privacy settings. You may or may not be aware that there are certain privacy settings. If you want to put your information into ChatGPT, but you do not want it to inform the large language model and to be potentially accessible to other people, not in its purest form, but actually enhancing the language model, then you can actually turn on this feature, temporary chat. If you turn on temporary chat, it doesn't keep history, it doesn't train the language model, and it doesn't remember all of the previous discussions you've had within ChatGPT. If you don't turn that on, then it builds up a picture of you. And I've heard people say an interesting thing to ask ChatGPT if you use it extensively and you haven't turned this feature, the temporary chat function on, is just go to ChatGPT and ask it about yourself based on all of the previous conversations that we have had together. What do you understand about me? And it's quite insightful, I understand. Okay, so what you can actually do is I toggle this, and you can toggle a memory on or off. If you want to start afresh, then in actual fact, hit the clear memories, and that will wipe your GPT. So it's got no memory of any interactions you've had before, and you're starting with a clean slate. And then the other feature that you can do is you can customize it. So you can put custom instructions into it, which means that every time you give it a prompt for create a picture, create an X, Y, or a Z, first of all, it reads that instruction, so you don't need to keep writing it, and then it presents you with the answer. So useful stuff, useful stuff. So with all that in mind, let's have a look at the basic prompt. So this is the prompt. It's the same one, the one that we've used before for perplexity, and it gave me a nice bit of copy that I could use in my flyer. I then said, all right, so this is good, and I can get an image, but maybe I want to do a QR code. So I actually asked ChatGPT, create me a QR code for my brewery, put in the URL, tapmeup.co.uk, and then hit return. And he said, oh, there you go. You can download the QR code for Tap Me Up here. And there it is. It worked. Interestingly, to begin with, it said it didn't work. So then I persisted and asked it to repeat the task. And he went, oh, sorry. Yeah, no, there you go. There's a QR code for you to download. So it does. ChatGPT can be a bit sluggish at times, and sometimes you've just got to keep giving it that nudge. You are your own nudge unit, I guess, in that respect. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about how we can develop the prompt template. So using Perplexity, I asked it to give me a template for creating flyers. So in this instance, it said, okay, well, let's break it down. This is a persona, this is a task that needs to be done, and this is a context for it. Maybe you could put your copy in using that framework. So that was my basic prompt. And then using that, using this answer and this copy, you said, oh, there you go. Look, I've populated that for you, which can be, again, quite useful. Now, what I like about Perplexity is at the bottom, it gives you this type of stuff. Extra related searches. So you can tap on one of those and then you further the conversation. And I guess something that I would say to everyone is don't use their first answer. Have a conversation. It's not a one-hit wonder. You'll get a lot more out of it by treating it like a colleague sitting on the other side of the desk. So ask it and then ask for more information, enter into a dialogue, give it additional information. And with GPT and with Perplexity, and I'm sure it's the same with Gemini, you can add images during the chat. You can add URLs just to add and embellish the conversation to dig deeper on it. So let's have a look at Perplexity. Here's just create a free account. It's nice and easy to do. Put the prompt in there. So this is our prompt using that framework. And then I get this. So I get a much more detailed, useful copy, which then, and you can see in the sidebar here, it starts to show you examples of images, and you can actually generate your own images on this. I'm not going to show you that on this example because I've got more stuff to show you about creating images. But as I say, I really like Perplexity because it provides links. I trust it. It's not to say I don't trust GPT, but it suits my own personal research style. So find the one that works for you. So reasons why you might use Copy Assistant. Well, it gets rid of typos, it improves your grammar, and it cuts down the waffle. And I admit to that I'm a waffler. I talk a good game, but actually when it comes to writing, I make all these mistakes. I get lost in the words. Oof, I get slightly overwhelmed by it. And my preference as a tool to help me with these things, you can use Perplexity and ChatGPT, sure, but I actually quite like Quillbot. And I'm going to show you some screenshots of why I like Quillbot. You can get a free version. I'm going to show you a version now that has some paid for extras, some additions, but the basic version is still very good. So this is the interface for it. So on the left-hand side is your copy or my copy. So this is what I've written here. And I want to improve the fluency, and you can see there are a number of different styles. So I want to improve the fluency of it. When I tap rephrase, then it rewrites it. And it does a really good job. And it shows you the statistics on how different it is and has it improved the fluency of it. So if we choose natural, you can see how it changes. If we go creative, again, you can see how it changes it. And one thing that I love about Perplexity is it has a drop down where you can use any of these words. So anything that's underlined, you can tap on that word and it does a breakdown, like a pop out. So you can change the wording in there. So if the phrase they've used isn't the right one for your interest, then hit the drop down, choose the one that's right, and then it will drop that into place. So where that's useful is if you working with people where English is not their first language, then this is a great learning tool where they could potentially use it for constructing copy of any kind for the website, for social media, for documentation, for emails. They can put it on the left-hand side, ask it to rephrase it, and they can start to understand the English language and they can start to look at the thesaurus elements of it. Another little feature, which is a paid for feature, and that's this, freezing words. What you can do here is if there is certain words or phrases in your original copy that you do not want Quillbot to change, you can write them in here and put commas in there and it will remember that. So it won't change that word. So it almost acts as like copy anchors. So that you can be certain that it's not going to reinterpret a phrase. That's particularly useful for people's names, their job titles, for product descriptions, for trademark elements, things where you just say, please don't change that. I really need it to say that. So that freeze feature I find to be really, really useful. All right, so let's have a look at SEO. Now, remember I showed you the free tool called Writer, which is brilliant because the use case can be SEO, and then you can actually create copy that's SEO compliant. I'm going to show you a tool now called Phrase, which there is a free version for. I'm going to show you some of the features on the paid for version of it, but I find that this is a super tool, and you can see there's a whole series of different use cases for how you would do it. It includes an AI tool. So what we do is we simply create a new document, AI workshops for small businesses, create the document, and these are the stages it goes through. It creates the outline, it develops the draft, and then it optimizes that. So they're the stages it goes through. So let's go. The first thing it does, based on the copy and the keywords that you've used, so let's say the search term, which is AI workshops for small business owners, is it goes, all right, okay, I'm going to find you the top 20 Google search results for that phrase, AI workshop for small businesses. And it gives you 20 different ranking web pages for that search term, all right, which is brilliant. That in itself is a super little tool. And then what you can actually do is go in and look at your copy, and then you can start to augment it and adjust it by bringing in certain aspects that would probably be more useful to help you rank for it. So you can, that's the first layer of it. The next layer that you do is this, which is scoring. So these are the keywords that you need to feature for. These are long tail and actually the main words in there. What it's actually doing now is looking at all of your copy and it's saying, right, okay, so how many instances do you have for each of these? And as you put in more instances of using certain words, then what it's actually doing is here, it's moving the slider up. So you can see it's green and we're currently here. We need to move the dial up to there. So by making optimizations, we're trying to get it pretty much to 70, 75%. If you do that, you'll rank for it, but it's not the only thing. And on a previous session, we had an SEO expert in, and I showed this phrase tool, and he was quite right in saying that's not the only thing with SEO. There's backlinking, there's a quality of the copy, so there are a number of other elements. But in the first instance, if you want to have a good go at this, then a tool like Phrase can actually help you with that. The other thing that it's quite good at is it compares all of these websites. So these are the ranking websites, and then your copy, and looking at long tail and short tail, and that you can see how many instances does your content have of this phrase, that phrase, that phrase, that phrase, because these are the main ones, and then comparing that to the ranking websites. So this is detail. And if this is too much detail, I get it. Totally get it. But for some people, they're at that level where they actually want to do this. They want to gamify the copy on their websites. They do want to rank organically. So this tool is very useful for that thing. All right, so let's look at using AI to create assets, images. So there are loads of great tools for creating it. When I asked Perplexity, what are the top three? It said DALL-E, it said Midjourney, and it said Stable Diffusion. So some of you may be using some of those. If you are, do put in the chat which is your preferred image generation tool. Now, bear in mind, some of these are embedded into tools. So DALL-E 3, which is developed by OpenAI, you can find that in ChatGPT. You can also find it in Perplexity. Midjourney is a standalone. Stable Diffusion, you can find that in some paid for and some free AI tools. They're not cheap, but arguably these are the best ones. If you want to pay to actually get high quality imagery, that's your top three, basically. And the advantage of subscribing and not using an OpenAI subscription to use DALL-E or Midjourney is the user interface for the native versions of these is much better than actually using it in ChatGPT, because it's a one shot. It gives you the image, you can't adjust it. There's minor modifications you can make to it, but actually within their native platforms, there's a lot more power in there. Now, I'm not going to show you those today. I'm going to show you some free versions. So the first one I'm going to show you is OpenArt. So this is OpenArt. This is their user interface, and there's a number of different things, a number of settings that I'll draw your attention to. So the first one is choosing the type of style of image that you want. So in this instance, photorealistic portrait, that's the one I've selected. You can see there are a number of other styles of images that you can choose. The second customization is the model itself. So remember I talked about the language model. So this tool will delve into a number of different language models, and they have different uses. And it's kind of giving you an example as to what the look would be of using that particular language model. Now, it is a little trial and error, and I'm going to show you some examples of how variations of a theme will get you different results, but it's free. So give it a go. Once you've exceeded a certain number of generations, and it will probably ask you to get a paid for version. And this is the right time for me to tell you that my personal opinion is that the paid for versions help these businesses keep going. It sounds incredible to say, but almost no AI companies are making massive amounts of money today. And lots of these startup businesses that are really trying benefit from paid services, which is why they throttle the capability of the free versions and encourage you to subscribe for a sum. So yeah, Gavin, thank you. You're using Ideogram. Fantastic. Yes, I highly recommend Ideogram. That was one of the first ones that seemed to get text right. Not 100%, but it seemed to do a much better job than others, although ChatGPT has now caught up a little bit. So let's have a look at this. So the first one is I'm using Stable Diffusion. It's a photorealistic portrait, Stable Diffusion. There's my prompt. Nice. A really, really simple prompt. That's all it is. Probably about 12 words. And these are the images that we generated from it. And then if we actually choose a different language model, so we're using Juggernaut now instead of Stable Diffusion, you can see it's exactly the same prompt, but look, it's actually produced different images. And on face value, these all look brilliant. But I'm sure that the eagle-eyed who are on this call will have spotted this, that in this example, on using the Juggernaut model, these images have 5 fingers and a thumb, and I'm not sure what's going on here, but this is a common problem with AI tools, and they struggle. They struggle with hands, and sometimes they struggle with eyes, and I'll show you some examples of how the eyes don't look quite right. It can be a real tell. So that's a nice simple use case for OpenArt. I highly recommend you just go and give it a go. But do, as Gavin's identified, try ideogram as well. So now I'm going to look at Photoshop. Now, this is a paid for tool, but I've got a full creative suite. So I paid a full subscription price. I think it's about £560 a year, but I do a lot of graphics. So for me, and I do lots of video editing, it's gold dust, worth every penny. But what I'm actually going to do is something a little bit dodgy. Now, this is my experiment and in no way is endorsed by the organization who are hosting this particular workshop. All right. But this was an experiment. I took a stock image and it has watermarks on it. Can you see this? These are all alarming watermarks. And I thought, all right, let's just go in and go into Photoshop and let's see if I can remove some of this wording. And it actually does let you do it using the generative tool. You select the area and it says, what do you want to do with that area? And in this instance, I just want to get rid of it. So you don't actually have to write anything. You just literally leave that blank, hit generate, and then it removes it. So you can see the alarmy there has suddenly disappeared and it's repurposed the image that sits behind it. And in this example, you can see I've done a number of instances of it where I've got rid of alarmy there and I've got rid of alarmy there. So again, I'm not a fan of counterfeits. All right. So I'm showing this about the capability of being able to remove unnecessary elements from an image using Photoshop. I am not endorsing you taking stock images and removing watermarks. All right. But let's go on because I want to show you other ways in which you can augment imagery. So we're going to now look again at OpenArt, so back to our freebie, and we're going to look at pose referencing. Now, this is a brilliant little feature. What you can actually do here in the toolbar on the left-hand side is you can actually choose a pose. So you can choose an image. And I did just that. I actually took this alarmy image and then I said to it, based on that and using the previous prompt, provide to me a new image. And it actually did. It took the position of that person's arms. And this is the key thing. Look at the angles of that. They are absolutely bang on. They are really, really good. So it's literally replicated this image, but with a completely AI generated avatar, a new photograph. Now, I wasn't keen on that particular image. So then I went on and said, okay, so if we start changing the strength, and this is the important bit here, this is full strength. So what that means is it's saying, take that and maximize the pose referencing. This could be the equivalent of 100%, basically. But if I drop it down to 50% or 0.5, you can see it's actually changed it slightly. So now the angles are not identical. This is slightly off, and it's now giving me a thumbs up. I didn't ask for a thumbs up, but it's given me a thumbs up. But it is still complying, but less so. But if I weaken the strength of that influence more so 10%, well, there you go. It's completely ignored the original reference. The only thing I think it's kept is the hand and the glass and in relation to that pose, but it's done a pretty poor job of it. And I've highlighted again that similar problem where it's got 5 fingers. So keep an eye out for that when you're generating your image. It will do that. Now, there's another feature within OpenArt, and this is face referencing. So we looked at the pose referencing where you upload an image, and depending on the angles, what's going on, then it will generate an image for you using that same prompt and also that same style of pose. We can do the same with the face. So let's have a look at that. This is the feature down here in the sidebar. And you can see this is my prompt. I'm still using the same prompt. Smiling woman peering through a glass of real ale. She's happy and clearly improves with the look of the beer. But I'm using a face reference, and it's the same thing. You just click and upload an image. So I went to the website and I got a picture of Kamala Harris. So I thought, right, let's have a look at Kamala as a face reference. How do you do? And it's like, oh, okay. Actually, it did it. It actually took her face and it superimposed it onto the generated image. Now, what's really interesting is this. The image that I used had this watermark across it, the New York Times. This language model did the right thing, in my humble opinion. It recognized the fact that there was a watermark there. And even though I was only using it for face reference, it actually put a watermark on there. It hasn't done a particularly good job of the wording. I think it's suggesting it's Getty images, but you can't really read the wording properly. But it was interesting to see that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get rid of that watermark. That was in for good. The only way I could have done that, and again, I don't endorse this, take this image into Photoshop, clone that out so that it shows her jacket and not those words, then go through this process, and that watermark won't be there. So I changed the strength of it, so I made it 50%. It's still got the watermarks in there, but you can see this now looks slightly less like her, but it's not a million miles away, to be honest. And so what's quite interesting is although the strength is only 50%, look at the angle of the arm. It's not a million miles off on this version. And yet when I was at 100% strength, it's concentrating on the person, not the pose. So I wanted to take it a stage further with face referencing. So let's say that you have two interesting faces and you want to bring those two faces together, so morph them into a new face. Well, you can do that. So I actually used, again, OpenArt, and I took a photograph that had two people in, which is actually me and my daughter. This is us at a wedding. So I said, right, that's a face reference. And I literally did a near full body shot that I uploaded. So this wasn't a close up on just the face. It was the whole thing. And this is what it actually did. Remember I've used exactly the same prompt. It's actually merged both of our faces to actually create two iterations of that image, much to my amusement of my daughter, who said I probably would look like that if I was wearing a skirt. I then went on and said, let's change the strength of this from 100%. Let's take it down to 50%. And then it did. It actually doesn't look a million miles away. I think these faces are all reasonably consistent. This one was quite interesting. This one seems to be a curveball out of the blue. So why has it suddenly put a person in the foreground for the first time? There's nothing in the prompt to do that. Remember the watermarks there. So I did a reverse Google search just to find out whether or not the language model was referencing a copyrighted image to include that in there. So I did a Google reverse search and unfortunately didn't show that there was pre-existing versions of that image, but it did show me that if I wanted to buy the top, I could get it for about £29 from various online stores. So I think it's probably referencing model images for clothing, but not necessarily for the facial features. But nerdy stuff, but interesting all the same. So let's have a look at magic prompts. So we got our magic prompt. So our original prompt, this is the basic prompt. So what I actually want to do is change it slightly. And I'm using ideogram to be able to do it. It takes ages. I only have the free version. So in actual fact, I had to wait 187 seconds. It seemed to take forever. And then it generated some images, and I really like ideogram. The quality of their images is brilliant. But actually, you can see what the magic prompt is. My original prompt is there, smiling woman, so that is 12 words. But in actual fact, the prompt it actually used is slightly more detailed, which is quite interesting in itself. You can see how it interprets. It's almost like saying, I know what you wanted to say, but here's what I think you should say to get the best result from that. And you can learn from that. That can help inform you as to how you write an image generation prompt that will be fit for purpose. So Do we do a prompt or do we not use a magic prompt? So we'll go into the OpenArt settings here, photorealistic portrait. I'm now using a more detailed prompt, the one that was in the magic prompt, if you like. I'm thinking, right, I'm just going to use that. Let's see how that changes the image. So I did. And using the Juggernaut Excel, I actually really like the quality of these images. I think this is very, very good. A much, much better iteration on the previous versions, you can see by comparison. So it's these two images compared to the previous versions. I actually prefer these two things. There's more research I wanted to do because I never give up on this stuff. I think once you get into a state of mind of just trying to reverse engineer images and understand how you can make a better image, then there's no end of iterations that you can do. And there is a neat little tool in OpenArt, which is called image to prompt. So what you actually do is you upload an image, and I actually uploaded one of the images that it had already created. I thought, well, okay, well, let's reverse engineer its own prompt. So it did. And this is what it said. Instead of this, a photo of a woman with a bright smile peering through a glass, yada, 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 it's actually said a woman sitting at a table with a glass of beer in front of her, smiling at the camera with people in the background. Claire Falkenstein. Where's that come from? Regionalism, portrait, stock photos. Like, okay, that's quite interesting. I've no idea who Claire Falkenstein is. That I don't know. But anyway, I generated it using that prompt, and I used this particular language model. And so that prompt using this particular model generated these two images, which are completely different to the previous one. So I thought, okay, let me try a different model. So I'm not going to use a clip model. I'm going to use a different one. So I'm going to use Deep Banuru. Let's see how it does it. Now, interestingly, look, it changed the prompt. This is the prompt that it gave me. So you can see there's a lot of detail in here, a lot, but it's words. It's not a sentence structure. It's just a whole series of words and commas. But of course, naturally, when I tried to create the image, he went, yeah, no, you can't do that unless you upgrade, because he said it's not safe for work words. And I have no idea. I never did get to the bottom of which of the words in here are not safe for work. But anyway, I ran out of talent on that. But you can see what I'm trying to show you here through a series of examples is build, do the research, understand how these different tools work, and utilize some of the superpowers within each of these applications to get the images that matter to you. It turned out, so my extensive research on Claire Falkenstein, who I didn't know existed, turned out that she's an artist who does lots of geometric design. And the reason why it put that in the first place was the background of this particular image. You see, it has the paneling, geometric. It picked out that as being a feature to make sure that it appeared in there. And of course, you know, oh, that's brilliant. So it should be geometric. But if I use that and leave Claire Falkenstein in, has it done it? No, it hasn't. It hasn't made it geometric. What it ended up doing, this does resemble Claire Falkenstein. So it actually put Claire Falkenstein's face into the model. So trial and error, gang, on all of this stuff. All about trial and error. Okay. So let's carry on with our research on this. So I'm now in ChatGPT. So I'm using the same prompt, Claire Falkenstein, regionalism. So this is a prompt that I'd reverse engineered. And this, you can see, look, I've got more of these geometrics. This is definitely the artwork of Claire Falkenstein. ChatGPT has faithfully interpreted that as an important element of the design. Do I like the image? No, I don't. Not for my particular use case, but nonetheless, it actually has taken on board the Claire Falkenstein aspects of this prompt. So you can see the dynamic lines that I mentioned. When I actually tried to redo this, so I actually gave it a prompt saying, remove the part about Claire Falkenstein. He went, yeah, computer says, no, I can't do that. So I then said, please repeat the task that I've asked of you. And the second time it did. So it removed this whole bit about Claire Falkenstein. And this is the image that it gave me. So you can see, and this is the prompt. This is the actual prompt it used to create that image. It looks a bit Barbie-ish for me. And I think there's more I would need to do in the prompt here, because although I said a high quality portrait photograph, I don't know, it feels like it's an animation. It's not, in my humble opinion, it's not fit for purpose. So I went back to my original prompt, which was much simpler. Smiling woman peering through a glass of real ale. She is happy and clearly approves of the look of the beer. So let's see what we get from that. And actually, that was better. So I used that prompt. It generated this image, which I thought was pretty good. And when I looked at the prompt that it used, back to that idea of thanks for your prompt, but I'm going to create my own prompt to create the image that I think you want. This is more detailed. So there's a lot more information in there. So if you are generating images in ChatGPT, or ideogram or OpenArt, then do dig into the image and what the prompt is that sits behind it. And I think you'll find it quite fascinating how it basically generates an image based on more information than you're willing to provide to it, and use it as a learning tool is my advice to you on that. So the final bit that I want to show you now on image creation before we open up for a conversation and then go into a short break is image erasing. So I'm back with my original prompt. I'm in a tool called Dream Studio. All right. So the original prompt, smiling woman peering through a glass of real ale. She's happy and clearly approves of the look of the beer. So I used that prompt. This is what it generated. So these two images here. Yep. Which are okay. They're good. I'm counting the fingers. Yes. Okay. I'm happy with the number of fingers. There are four fingers and a hidden thumb. Great. Mission accomplished on that one. However, when I look at personally, from an aesthetics point of view, when I look at that image, I think, yeah, it's all right. But I just feel that there's a lot of stuff in the background that's distracting. It's created some really peculiar things here. It's actually created pumps in the background, bottles, and I don't get it. I don't understand why it's introduced those. I think they're a distraction. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the feature in Dream Studio, which is an eraser tool. And it's brilliant. In effect, what you do is, and in fact, so let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that in a bit more detail. You get a brush. And anybody who uses Photoshop or Lightroom, you'll be familiar with this. This little white dot is a brush. And you can use these sliders to change the size of it, how strong it is, and if it blurs at the edges. All right. And then what you're left with, and you can see over here, is a circle. By simply painting over the areas using that tool, you're left with this. So let me just zoom out a little. I can show you like that. So you can see that checkerboard effect is the areas now that I've said to this image tool, please remove. I don't want those featuring in there. So let me just come out of that. And what was the net result of it? That. Okay. It's slightly better. I personally feel that it's still put pumps in the background. They're not as dominant as they were here. And from an aesthetics point of view, great. That's better. But it has still left them in there. Again, this is trial and error on that. My final thing that I'm going to show you now is, actually got two things I'll show you before we open up for a chat, is using negative prompts. So I'm still in Dream Studio, and what I want to do is I'm using a negative prompt. So I've got my positive prompt and what I want it to do, but then I can also give it instruction of things I don't want included. That's what a negative prompt is. So I've said, what I don't want to see is a busy background because it's distracting and it takes away attention from the main composition. So I'll put that copy in there. So that's the negative prompt area. So you can see the positive prompt and the negative prompt for it. And what has it done? Mission accomplished. It actually has done a really good variation of those images where you can see they're blurred backgrounds, you've got shallow depth of field, all of that sort of stuff. Much more useful. Much more useful. Now, you can see that I've done this at 100% strength. What you actually can do is change the strength of that negative prompt. So when you do it, this is basically 100%. So it gave me two different images. If I actually start, what it's actually doing, you'll notice, is I reduce the strength of the image. It's starting to morph it into the other person. So what it's actually doing is it's starting off with this image, and as it morphs across, you end up here, which is a reference to this image. And it's the same there. So a fascinating little bit of nerdiness around how you can actually create new faces from your language model based on the strength of the image that you want to do. All right. So our final one, before we go into it, I'm going back to my original prompt. I'm then going to use Perplexity to do a search for it. Perplexity produces images, nothing wrong with that. They're okay. You can see lots of them are watermarked images. It tends to show you stock images. They're really trying hard to get away from you getting access to images that you have no rights to. So back in the old days with Google search, you could go to Google search and put in a prompt like that, and it would produce loads of images. And these were images that people are publishing on their websites and in the public domain. Now you'll notice if you go to things like Google or indeed use language models like this to search for images, it always favors stock images. It wants you to pay for stock images, but I don't want to pay for stock images. So in Perplexity down here, we can actually generate our own images. So let's give it a go. Let's try it. So I tapped on the photography. I want to create a photograph image. There it is. I tried 3 different language models in the back end using this same prompt, exactly the same prompt. So I used Flux, DALL-E 3, and I used Playground. And this literally is exactly the same prompt and how each of the 3 language models interpreted that prompt. And, back to my earlier point about eyes. Some of these language models struggle with eyes. So you can see the eyes are shocking on this one. And even with DALL-E 3 within Perplexity, you can see this eye is smaller. It's up at an angle. It clearly hasn't worked. The balance is not there. That one's not too shabby. That one's pretty good using the Flux model for it. So then what I said was, okay, well, let's add to it. So you can go in and change the style and add a bit more information. And when you do that, you get this, and I really like that image. I think that one is higher quality than this one. It's got the bokeh in the background. It's got the shallow depth of field with the bare glass in front. That has literally met the specification of a smiling woman peering through a glass of real ale. Literally, you can see she's doing exactly that. It's actually the only one that's adhered to that prompt. Okay, gang. So we are at the halfway point, and what I do want to do is I'm just going to pause. Okay, so use cases for business. We're going to start off with using AI for research. There are some great research tools that are out there. If you're an academic or you want academic rigor in what you do, then you can use Perplexity, a great tool. I have the paid for version of it because I really, really like that. You can get the free version. It does always provides you with sources, but it's much more comprehensive in a paid for version, and it uses the reasoning models from OpenAI and also from DeepSeek, which adds an extra level of interest to searches. There are also 2 more academic oriented ones, so SciSpace and Elicit. These are, again, paid for services, but they're very good for that. And so if you need to do it, then consider one of these to access white papers and use generative conversation to further your research. And they're very powerful for that. With this one, with SciSpace, you can actually upload all of your own documents into it, and then you can learn from that and take extracts from it. So it's a really powerful platform for doing almost internal research. Now, it's worth noting, and it's not part of this presentation, that there is a Microsoft Copilot. If you have the paid for version of Microsoft Copilot, then you can toggle between searching the World Wide Web or using your own documentation that might be in SharePoint or in a OneDrive account to do your own research. So you don't need to upload documents anywhere. And of course, a caveat with this is when you upload content to the cloud, you've got to be certain that your rights and privileges are protected and that this isn't going to inform the language model. And I'm assured that in this particular example, SciSpace, they adopt a similar policy to Microsoft with Copilot, that it doesn't inform the language model. For safety, my preference is to either use Perplexity because you can create spaces, so dedicated research zones where you can upload all of your documents to it. And that does not inform the language model. It respects privacy, and then you can do research, but you're limited to how many documents you can upload. The better solution is Copilot, because actually it's going to go straight to your OneDrive. And if you've got 44 gigabytes of files, then it can access 44 gigabytes of files. So it's very useful for that. Now, for all of you ChatGPT fans, then there is Scholar GPT, which is pretty good. So this is consensus. And I just did a little experiment, provide citations for a blog article about environmental impact of printed labels. I want some academic rigor. And that's what it produced. He said, oh, there you go. Look, here's a load of research that's been done, and you can read the white papers here. So it's to, kind of augment what you're doing, then it's backed up by academic rigor. And when you go into it, then, you can then create copy, you can read the abstract, and then you can take out the content that you actually want to do for that. But let's carry on. Let's look more. Let's look at Scholar GPT. Find me white papers on the environmental impacts, printed labels. Scholar GPT does the same thing. Look, it's got the here button, so hyperlink to those. Now, the one thing that I discovered about Scholar GPT is, of course, lots of these are behind a paywall. So although you tap on it, you can read the extract from it. You can't actually read the white paper. So you then have to go in and potentially subscribe. So you can see it shows the abstract, it shows a bit of the introduction, it limits how many pages it shows you the table of contents, but if you actually want to read the whole article, then you need to subscribe to whichever platform it is. But for some of you, it may be the case that you are already subscribed to some of those platforms. So this can be, Scholar GPT can be a fast track process of searching through them if that particular platform where the white papers are published doesn't have a generative AI tool already built into it for those searches. More and more, we're finding that they are now building in generative capabilities just so that they can keep you native in their platform instead of you needing to use a third party like Scholar GPT. There's a really interesting chap, Dr. Andrew Stapleton. He's got a YouTube video there. I've put a link in here for you to have a look at. He loves his wacky t-shirts. What he doesn't know about using GPTs for doing academic research, you don't need to know any more than what he knows. He's got some incredible videos and the really detailed stuff. And bearing in mind, look, this is his target: PhDs, startup businesses, content creators, and tech people. That's who he's focusing his research expertise on. And he shows you all the really useful tools for being able to do that. So consider that. Consider it a useful, him to be one of a number of useful people on YouTube. And I guess this is a useful point really for me to say about, please bear in mind that when you're trying to find subject matter experts on artificial intelligence, I've actually found YouTube to be a really good source for finding out the very latest language models. Bearing in mind that for the last 18 months, I've been delivering workshops on AI for business. And throughout that time, I've subscribed to a number of channels like MadVid Pro, amongst others, Peter Diamandis. There are a number of people who actually are constantly putting out lots of videos about the latest tools. Here's what's new, the latest video gen tools, the latest image generation tools, the latest research tools. So consider having a look on YouTube at some of these people who are publishing 2-3 times a week, because their films may be only 20-30 minutes long, but what they tend to do is they'll go through chapters and they'll introduce you maybe 10 or 15 different platforms or new tools that have just been released. So if you want to be at the cutting edge of the latest AI tools, then YouTube. And of course, it's visual, which appeals to me. I'm a visual thinker, so I'd much rather watch a video rather than read about it. So, and I'm going to show you an example of that shortly. So let's develop AI, or let's develop our business model using AI, I should say. So first one is perplexity. Let's turn strategy into action. So the objective on this case study is a job description tree. The ultimate aim was to create a job description with responsibilities and an offer letter for different people in the business. And there were a number of things: understanding the financial forecasting models that we use, the core responsibilities from old job descriptions, a strategy document from the business, the objectives for people within the business, and their salary and commission structure. This is the green stuff is known. But in actual fact, what we were trying to get to is initially was to get to 2B, create a goal tracker for targets and smart objectives that can become part of a job description and an offer letter. So in order to do that, we looked at a strategy document for the organization where they listed where their key strategic goals are. And if ever you've come across this, where a business publishes its strategy, one of the big challenges is turning strategy into action. So how can you encourage people who have some area of influence in one of those strategic areas to get involved? So what I did was I went to Perplexity and I said, I need help in setting some smart objectives into a table. If I give you a goal, please can you put it into a table and leave gaps where more information is needed? So that's the prompt that I put in it. And this is how it went about it. He identified that. He understood what a smart thing was. Yeah. And I know what I need to do. These are the stages. And his answer was, yeah, sure. Just tell me what goal you have in mind, and then I can do the magic. So I thought, right, okay, well, let's have a look at this. The HR goals in 2024. One of the goals was to improve the employee experience by doing employee surveys to get a sense of sentiment. So how can people within the business develop smart objectives to support that strategic aim? Well, there you go. There is a smart objective set for the HR goal. And what it's actually done is it's broken it down into the SMART criteria of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And you can see what it's actually done is it's left gaps. And these gaps are critical because when we were doing this is a real case study. When we then went back to the manager or line manager of that particular area, we said, here's some SMART goals, fill in the gaps. They felt in control of it. Not everybody's great at writing SMART objectives. But actually, if you've got the framework there and all I've got to do is fill in the numbers, then hey presto, suddenly people feel in control of an objective in their area. So we did that. We filled in all of the details. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to put all of these smart objectives into a nice little Excel dashboard. And then that way everybody can see, they can do the changes, percentages, say how far through they were with each objective. And then I came unstuck wanting to use color in Microsoft Excel. And this is another thing that you can do with things like Perplexity is just ask it a technical question. How do I get Excel to show certain colors when it displays a percentage amount? Thanks. And this is what it gave me. It helped me do formatting using conditional formatting based on percentages. And you can see these are some of the smart objectives. And this is the dashboard that we use to create a tracker of some of those things. So a nice, simple way of saying these are the 5, 10, 3 strategic aims of the organization. And you use an AI tool to unpack that and make some measurables that people can influence that will work towards that particular goal. So I mentioned earlier about me being that person that likes to watch rather than read. So I went through a little exercise here on using training videos. So this is a use case. Some people prefer information through video rather than written text. So this tool, you can use things such as a work instruction or a SOP to create a video. And it can act as an introduction. So if you've got members of the team, you're onboarding them into a new role, there are certain work instructions and standard operating procedures that are relevant to their role. And you think, well, that's War and Peace. I maybe need to give them a light touch version of it. Then you can use a tool like Synesthesia to create those things. So I'm going to show you how I went about doing that. So the very first thing that I did was using this tool, said, right, okay, I'm going to create a project. And what is this first video about? Well, it's a brief lecture on the use of generative AI in the workplace. Who's the audience? Company employees. So at that point, I cracked my knuckles and thought, right, okay, I've just spotted something down at the bottom here. Do you have something in mind? Why not upload a PDF? A Word document or a text file to help us understand what you're trying to put across in it. And I thought, yeah, all right. But I haven't got a work instruction because actually this is just an experiment. So I thought, right, okay, I can do this. I'm going to go to Perplexity. So I went to Perplexity and I said, I need to create an instructional document about safely using generative AI in our marketing ads. I want to stress the importance of staying on brand and not letting synthetic content get published without close inspection and approval by a line manager. I then and I'm on the pro version, I hit go, and it actually searched 44 different sources to provide to me something that I thought was brilliant. And it's this. guidelines for using generative AI in marketing, and it's broken it down and explained points of consideration for it. Now, if you haven't got anything like that, this can be a starter for 10. Now, that's great. So that's the guidelines, but actually I want to take it a stage further. So let's have a look at how I can then take that work instruction, the guidelines, and turn it into a video. So we're back here. So remember, we're in synesthesia, and it's this. I uploaded the guidelines document that I created from Perplexity. And then I said, boom, create a video. And he went, yeah, okay, I can create a video, but you need to choose the avatar, the person that you would like to appear in that video. Now, what you can do, I haven't got the paid for version of this, and I'm going to show you what you can do for free. In the paid for version, you actually can nominate people within the organization to do a 5-minute recording with a non-busy background. So not like the kind of background I've got behind me, but a nice neutral background. Say in a 5-minute conversation in their natural style, and then it will use that as an avatar. So in essence, it becomes a familiar person within your organization. You can do that on the free version, but I was limited to which ones I could go with. But anyway, it didn't stop me because I created it. This is basically the user interface of it. And it's absolutely brilliant. This thing is so powerful. It took the copy and it broke it down into different scenes. And you can see these are the different scenes of how it's doing it. And you can bring your logos in there. It does the introduction, all of that kind of good stuff. You can edit anything. If you edit the text in here, the avatar, the person speaking, will change what they say. It's super. You can add more to it. So if there was something that was missing from your original content, you think, I need to add that, do it. You can insert additional scenes saying, well, I think, it hasn't obviously explained the whole of the document. It's listed out the key features. In my humble opinion, it's missed one important point. I'm going to insert a new scene in there, and this is what I want the avatar to say. And you can see there's lots of different, you can change the layout, change colors, keep it on brand, all that kind of good stuff. It all works really, really well, and it's very fast at doing it as well. It'll probably do it in a few minutes. So I did that. I went through that exercise. And remember, I took an original prompt into Perplexity and said, create me guidelines for the use of AI in marketing, in our marketing team. He created the guidelines. I uploaded it to this. I chose the style, chose the avatar, corrected the text, and then went, just press play. Let's see what it's like.
Imagine a world where marketing content is crafted in minutes, not days. Generative AI is revolutionizing how we create, offering speed and efficiency like never before. But how does it truly transform our marketing strategies? Generative AI enhances marketing efficiency by automating repetitive tasks, allowing teams to focus on creativity. Yet it's crucial to remember that AI should complement, not replace, human ingenuity. Let's explore how this synergy works. To maintain brand integrity, AI-generated visuals must adhere to strict guidelines. Colors, typography, and imagery should reflect our brand's identity consistently across all platforms. This ensures a unified brand presence. Consistency in brand voice is key at Beyond. AI must align with our established tone and messaging, ensuring every interaction resonates with our audience. Approved templates and assets are vital tools in achieving this harmony. Here at Beyond, AI-generated content undergoes a multi-step review process. Initial quality checks, brand alignment, and legal reviews ensure compliance and accuracy. Each step is crucial in maintaining our brand's reputation. Reviewers play a pivotal role in this process. They verify content accuracy, check for biases, and ensure regulatory compliance. Their expertise guarantees that our AI content meets the highest standards. AI content can pose risks like biases and copyright issues. Implementing small, controlled pilots with human oversight helps mitigate these risks. Regular audits ensure continuous improvement and content quality. By embracing AI responsibly at Beyond, we enhance our marketing efforts while safeguarding our brand. Let's commit to using AI as a tool for innovation, ensuring every piece of content reflects our values and vision.
And that's it. And that was literally created. I probably did the whole thing from start to finish, from that initial, oh, eureka, why don't I do a video about this, to generating a work instruction, uploading the work instruction, choosing the avatar, choosing the style, adding in a few additional scenes, being happy with it, adding logos, changing colors, downloading it. That probably took me about 30 minutes, like flat out, and it was free. Now, you are limited. I went in this morning to try and do a new version of this because I thought, for fun, I'll show you a variation. However, on the free version, you're limited to how many minutes you can generate. So you can do a million iterations, but as soon as you commit to export it as a video, you're limited to how many minutes you're allowed. And down here, if I show you come on, there we go. There. So on the free version, you're limited. On the £23 a month version, one editor, 3 guest commenters, 10 minutes per month. You can have 3 personal avatars, and you can see it goes up for £69 a month. You can have 30 minutes, 5 personal avatars, and then, of course, you can go on and on and on. So 30 minutes is actually quite a lot of content per month. In my humble opinion, if you're serious, if you feel that onboarding videos are useful, this is arguably one of the better tools for doing that. There are other tools that are available as well. Okay, gang, let's move on because I want to talk about business planning. And this is my first introduction to R1. So tools like Perplexity or ChatGPT, they now have reasoning tools, which actually takes research to another level. So back in the old days, pre-reasoning, you would put a prompt into ChatGPT, hit return, and it would go, oh yeah, I've got the answer, and it would give it to you instantly. There were biases in there. There was inaccuracies in there. It was just literally, just my first thought. The statistically most probable answer is this, have it. Well, reasoning now has been introduced where he initially does that bit, but then he goes, whoa, hold on a minute. I know before we give the results, let's consider a few things here. Let's just make sure that it does this and it doesn't do that. It has its own internal secondary dialogue, the reasoning bit. Yeah. And in Perplexity, you can use the DeepSeek reasoning tool, which if any of you have been keeping up with that, that's a real game-changing free tool that's come out of China. They've made it open source. So people like ChatGPT, people like Microsoft, people like Perplexity have got that language model. They've got it stored safely in their US servers. So any information from the reasoning model doesn't go back to the secretive organization in China who came up with it. They turned out to be a stock market company, stock trading company who had huge amounts of data and also huge amounts of processing capacity. And they thought, actually, we've got all this expertise and all these processors, let's create a language model. And they did, and it was a real disruptor. But people were worried, saying, no, you go to DeepSeek and you're just going to give your data over to an unknown entity. So the language models now, the reasoning models, stay within the United States, so they stay safely in there. So let's have a look. I'm a pub in Reading. We may buy a new system for brewing our own beer in-house. Please, can you create a business model canvas for this? Now, if you've attended any of our workshops, and these are more relevant to startups, we always talk about this, the business model canvas. It's a single-page business plan. It's arguably the best tool I know of for taking a good idea and putting it down on paper. It breaks it down into chunks and allows you to consider, how am I going to create attractiveness for my offer? From an operations point of view, how am I going to be able to run my business with all of these things that need to happen? And from a commercial point of view, how am I going to make a profit? You know, I need to balance up the revenue coming in and the costs going out. You put it all on a single sheet of paper. It looks really basic, but it isn't. It's brilliant. It's the best tool that's out there. So anyway, that's why I chose in this particular example, using Perplexity with its reasoning model to create the business model canvas. So this is what it did. The initial research. Look at this. This is before it's even given me the answer. Look at the thought process it's gone through. And what's really interesting about this is this second section, the reasoning section. It's actually, if you look at this and do so afterwards, and if you've got access to a reasoning model within a generative tool, it's fascinating. It actually talks like a human being. Okay, so the user is a pub in Reading looking to buy a new system. First, I need to do this, then I need to do that, and then I need to be mindful of this, and I should also consider that. It actually talks to itself. It's incredible. It really is it's uncanny, in fact. And when you pop open some of these sidebars, you can see these little chevrons here. If you tap on one of those, it opens it out. So you can see in here, I opened up a couple of these. So researching the components of a business model canvas, they're the examples. Look, it's actually got 8 different sources that it's come up with, that it's looking at. The second one, canvases, 8 examples, gathering the information about brewing systems, 8 examples, real world, real information that it's actually accessing. This is just at the research stage, and that's before it started to put together the answers. So when we look at the R1 reasoning, so this bottom section where it's doing its own internal dialogue and talking to itself like it's a human, you can see, I need to ensure all sections are covered with the relevant examples from the search results. For instance, it's literally talking to itself, and each of these numbers is a link to a reference where you can tap on it, go and read more about that. And this one, I should also consider the pub's location in Reading. Maybe tailoring the customer segments to include locals and tourists visiting Reading, and perhaps collaborating with the local events there. The BMC should be specific to their situation, not too generic. So it really is doing a lot of thought. And this thing, what's really interesting is that it doesn't do it straight away. So, if you're used to one hit wonder, it splats the answer out straight away for you. When you initiate the reasoning tool within ChatGPT or Perplexity, it can take up to a minute, because it's actually doing deeper research, it's doing reasoning, it does secondary research, it gathers its thoughts, and it goes through each of the reasoning stages before it gives you the answer. And then the answer it gives you back, in this particular example using Perplexity, is that. Customer segments, value proposition channels with links. I mean, look at this. Look at the numbers, 56. That means that there are 56 live sources of information that this tool has used to gather the information that sits behind it. And then, of course, customer relations, Rev, your key resources, the key activities, the operational things that sit behind it, the partnership model, your cost structure, and then it gives you the summary. Really, really good summary explaining things like, you should do this and try that combi tank. It's brilliant, honestly. Try it. Try the reasoning tools for that. And if you haven't ever developed a business plan, then consider using Perplexity or ChatGPT through the business model canvas in the first instance to flesh out the detail, augment it with more information, and then ask it to output formal business plan. It's very good at doing it, and it saves you all the legwork. All right, so let's have a look at project management. So bearing in mind that I am a pub in Reading, and I am thinking about introducing brewing on site, creating our own microbrewery, I want a simple timing plan for capital expenditure. So here I am using reasoning in Perplexity. I need a timing plan. I'm going to do the purchase in 2025. I've got 4 people, allocate tasks to each person. I've got the financial director, operations director, master brewer, marketing manager. They're the 4 job descriptions that I need to be involved in this little project, and I need to know when they're going to get involved. So create tasks per person and prioritize by date. So we went through the reasoning, same thing. And this is that thing that it's doing. It's doing this. Okay, I'm going to have to think about this. Do you want me to notify you? And what you can do is, if you enable that, you can close the browser down, go off and do something more interesting instead. And when it's finished its research, it will do a pop-up on your desktop saying, research available, bin, bin, bin. You can tap on that and it will bring you back into your search, providing with the information. So here is a timing plan that it created. So you can see these are the tasks, when they need to start, when they need to end, and the priority for each person in turn, or each role, I should say, within it. And it also, good project management practice, talked about sequencing, overlapping, and buffering. That is pretty good. I've done this before. So in the one that I did in December, we did a similar exercise, but it didn't have reasoning in it, okay? And what I noticed, that by using reasoning, it's definitely adopting a much higher degree of project management discipline. So that hint section that appears at the bottom, I thought, well, that's quite interesting. So after I've done my initial search, I've got the timing plan. It said, well, what are the key performance indicators for a craft brewery? So I said, all right, okay, I'm going to tap on that. But actually what I did was I augmented the prompt, and I said, so he said, what are the key performance indicators for a craft brewery, which is what I want to be. But what I then said was, please, can you put all of this into a table with columns for each relatable data type? Please include in the final column review frequency. And then I hit return. And after a bit of thinking, it provided me with this, which is pretty good. Again, these are KPIs. These are KPIs based on benchmarking and the frequency in which we need to do the review to make sure that if we are introducing it over the life cycle of this thing, what should we be measuring? What should we be trying to achieve? Again, it's just, this is gold dust, absolute gold dust. It would take you an eternity to come up with those. And really, when you look at it and you think, well, okay, so financial performance with the new microbrewery, sales growth rate 10 to 15% year over year. You might turn around and say, no, not ambitious enough. I'm expecting that we'll increase it by 25%. Fine, change it. But actually, gross profit margin, cost of goods sold, operating margin, these are things that some people don't normally think about as a KPI. So this tool, although it's providing you with benchmarking examples, it does allow you then to go in and say, well, okay, I'm going to tweak this a little bit like that other example I showed you with smart objectives, where you put in your own variations of the data, those metrics that you will measure people or process against. Now, I've been in project management for quite a few years now, and one of the things that people overlook and get quite downhearted about is risk. And people will often develop a project and not consider risk, and that's at the detriment to decent, good best practice in project management. So I thought, well, let's carry on. I'm in the same search term here as well, by the way. So this is in the same space. I'm carrying on the conversation. So let's say I want a simple risk register, the scale of 0 to 5. Give me 10 items on cost, utilization, maintenance, anything, whatever you think is relevant to this. Bearing in mind, I'm trying to create my own microbrewery within the basement of the pub. I don't know this stuff. I'm just a bar manager. I've been given the job to do the research. But anyway, put that information into an easy to read table, order the risks from high to low, and make sure that you include a column that offers a mitigation or a countermeasure, like to avoid that particular risk occurring, and hit return. And this is what it gives you. It gives you a table with risk, rise in production costs, equipment failure, supply chain disruptions, product liability, so on and so forth. And it's actually giving you the risk ratings. And if you've never done risk ratings before, I'll just quickly summarize this for you. In a risk register, there are two important factors. The first is the likelihood. So what is the likelihood that costs could increase? 0, definitely won't happen. 5, yeah, production costs are going to go up. What is the impact that risk would have on our business? So likelihood is, will it happen? Impact is, how severe will that impact be? And you give it a score of 0 to 5. And you can change these numbers. You don't necessarily need to stick to 0 to 5. The important thing is it considers both the likelihood and the impact, and it multiplies the two together. 5 times 5 equals 25. That is what we call a rolled up risk score. And that's general project management principles of that you would work on that. Now, what's interesting is that I'm looking for mitigation here. So how do we avoid rising production costs? Well, you could implement cost control measures and negotiate with suppliers. That's a potential solution to it. It's only one. Quite often, you might have a number of different scenarios, and you might offer a number of different countermeasures to deal with that, because some things can occur, will occur, and you've got to deal with them if they are going to happen. In some instances, by knowing about them in advance, you can work around it, find a solution so it will never happen. And this was literally a one hit at creating this using a reasoning model. So the same rules apply. It gives you a big long list of all of the stuff, but nonetheless, it was the first hit. And what you can actually go in then and into the language model and say, right, okay, I need to dig deeper into the rising production costs. Give me more metrics, give me more X, Y, and Z. Please recreate the table based on our new conversation, and it will keep updating it. And again, with this reasoning model that we're now using, it's putting in some really useful additional metrics here, talking about where the preventative measures are, how you monitor it. It's drawing your attention to the big elephants in the room. So then I thought, okay, well, that's good. I mean, that's quite useful. But what I now want to do is add a column for how frequently these project risks should be monitored. So these are exactly the same. This is the same table that you saw from the previous slide, but now it's just added a new column in there saying monthly, weekly. So this is AI's suggestion of how frequently you should monitor the risks on that. And the illustration here, or the demonstration I'm showing you here, isn't necessarily just about best practice in project management, but it's also showing you how once you've got the answer and it's presented you with a table, you can then go back and say, okay, I want you to repeat that, but I now need you to add in this, this, and this, and it will do that for you. So I'm feeling confident. All right. I've got a good business plan through the business model canvas. I've got task allocations and I've got a risk register. So I'm feeling good, but I might need some more justification for this. So I'm going to do a bit of competitive analysis now. I'm going to use Perplexity with this reasoning model, and I want to research competition. I'm going to tell you about my business, and you're going to find similar businesses in my area. You're going to list 5 businesses that I'm likely to compete against, and you're going to put it into a table with a link to their website. So that's the instruction. So here are the details. And remember, this is all in one whole prompt. I've just broken it down so you can understand my thought process for how I constructed a fairly lengthy prompt to get the result that I wanted. So context of the business, it's a pub in Reading, established in 1990. The company name is Tap Me Up. There are 5 members of the team, and we're all fully qualified master brewers. We're passionate about natural organic English ingredients. The audience we're trying to target is craft ale drinkers. The key selling points is expertise in brewing, focus on organic English ingredients, the design, brewing, and serving of homemade craft beers and ales. So what can you do with that, Perplexity? This is the table it gave me back. These are real businesses as well, and you can do it literally for anything. It will provide to you, look at this. It's showing you the name of the competitor, a URL, so you can go and look them up yourself. It's gone to their websites, it's picked out their USPs, and it's also done a comparison. So it's actually showing you where you're stronger, or in some instances, actually where it is stronger. And at the bottom of this search section, I'm going to show you on the next screen, there was another section. So underneath this table that presented this information, it also had this. Key competitive advantages for Tap Me Up and recommended differentiation strategies. Points of difference. This is gold dust. This is basically an AI tool that's analyzed the competition and is giving you ways in which you could articulate your offer and structure it in a certain way so that it's attractive and meaningful for, you to be able to craft copy for your website, flyers, you name it. There's kind of no end to potentially what you can do with it. Sometimes it's not easy to come up with this sort of stuff yourself. So use this as a helping hand. And then, interestingly, right at the very bottom, it asked me a question. I almost missed this, but right at the very bottom, underneath all of this, which was really good, it said, would you like me to analyze specific aspects of their menus and pricing? And I thought, oh, hello. Yes, please. So please analyze their menus and pricing and put into a table. And it did. It showed their food offerings, the range of pricing for their food, their beer pricing, their organic claims, which is something the AI has picked up on. The fact that, look, 0 Degrees uses some organic. Loddon Tap Yard uses some local organic product, but it's literally, this is a clean slate in my humble opinion. Key differentiators. So we can actually start to compare it and to say, well, we're clearly winning on the organic claim, but, what advantage do they have? What's their point of difference? Well, they're a rural farm. They offer brewery tours. This sort of stuff is then food for thought for me, thinking, I wonder if we could do that. Tour of the microbrewery once a month or something like that to people who come in. Look, they do award-winning pizzas. Well, we do food anyway, so that's not relevant. Oh, okay, this is interesting. They're part of camera. Interesting. We're not, and we have thought about that. I wonder if we should register ourselves as part of camera. So what we're doing here is getting that next level of research, that next tier of insight into the competition. And, that ethically, there's nothing wrong with this. What I would say is that This is all published in the public domain, hence all of the numbers. And you can see there's actually 34 different reference points that this perplexity reasoning tool has used to gather the information for this. And remember, I went through a repetitive exercise where I asked it and it presented, then I asked it another thing and it presented the next thing, and asked it another thing. I went through layers of conversation that I've shown you on previous slides. As you ask it new things, it doesn't reuse the numbering. So what it's actually doing is it's presenting new reference points for your new questions that you're asking it. So hugely powerful. And you can see over on this side, what it's actually doing on this side of Perplexity is showing you examples. So you can see, look, that's literally a screenshot of the menus from one of these pubs. You can go in here, you can see the photographs, and there are other things. You can look for videos if you've got them on YouTube. You can generate your own images in reference to that. I don't think that would work on that one, but maybe on the previous slide, things like this, you had in the sidebar the same thing, then maybe you could generate images that would be useful for that. So that's a nice bit of research that we've done in that. Now let's look at this. So when we've got the much more detail about the menu and pricing, so initially we have the table, look at all of this, tap me up opportunities, it's doing the same thing. It's literally doing the same thing. It's showing you where there's an opportunity for you to do it. Maybe you could consider this. Maybe you could do that. You know, brewmaster tasting flights. I love that idea. Why don't we think of that? Well, hey, thanks, Perplexity. You've just given us a great idea. And gap analysis. You know, this organic certified, well, field to glass. There you go. It's literally saying, why don't you consider using Berkshire's organic barley ale? Nobody's using it. Brewing education integration, create QR codes for videos, you know, get your master brewer to talk about the process, talk about why they're using this hop and this barley, create QR codes. It's giving you lots of genius ideas. And it's also providing you with pricing strategies. Look at this. This is just so helpful. And again, these are the reference points that it's used in this particular section of how it delivers it. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit now from beer. I appreciate this is a niche topic, but the principles are the same no matter whether you're selling cans of beer or whether you're selling candles or widgets or creative services, you name it, everything I've shown you still works for it. And if you really are serious about project management, and I've given you some really light touch tools of how you can do it using generative tools that already exist, but there are some really cool tools that are out there, like Click Me Up, Atlassian and TaskGuide. If you're serious about project management, and these sort of tools can help you remain proactive so you know what's happening and where the blockers are. They can improve the style of communication because you can build communications lists and you can inform people and give them access to certain parts of your project plans. That can be really useful. And it actually looks at emotional intelligence and it helps you craft your communication style and the way you present information so that it'll be best well received. And that one is really important because quite often a project manager has to bring bad news. There are new risks. We've gone over budget. There's a challenge. We're going to be late on this. So these are real world things that I've said 1,000 times. And these sorts of tools can help you articulate what that need is. So we look at Click Me Up, fantastic little tool. You can try it for free. It's very good. I'm using that on a membership project. And this is a collaboration with 2 software developers, 2 departments, and 5 other interested parties outside of any of them organizations. And we're all in Click Me Up using the project management methodology and using all of the tools that they have. And I can personally vouch for that as being a particularly good one. Other ones are available, such as Jira. So Atlassian, they have just introduced Atlassian intelligence into it. So if you are using things like Jira or Trello, there's a common one that's under the same umbrella of this organization. They now have generative tools within there to help you understand and talk to the software as a project manager. And the new kid on the block is this one, which is called Height.ap. It considers itself autonomous and it is pretty good. It gives you loads of really, really useful tools. So as you start to build a project, In the sidebar, the thinking bar, if you like, the generative bar at the side, it brings up conversational videos. It shows you instructions, how to do this, how to do that. I'm struggling with this. Hey, I don't know how to create this particular subtask. Oh, okay, I can do that. Here's a video, but I can keep a walkthrough of it. Why don't you start the process and I'll tell you in the chat if you need to do something different. It's very powerful for everything, starting off with your project charter, cascading through everything that you need to do. Nerdy stuff. This is all nerdy stuff. And if none of you are project managers, my sincere apologies for showing you it. But if you do have friends who are project managers, ask them, what are they using? You know, what tools do they use for their project management? Okay, gang, I'm just going to finish off and then we can open up for questions on last little bit. So just more fun. So more back to social media assets, but I'm following the train of thought about our brewery that we're trying to create in the back of a pub. I'm going to use Perplexity. Knowing what you know about my company and the competition, help me create 5 short social media posts. They need to set me apart from the competition. Remember, it already has put points of difference. It's done all the analysis of differentiation. And then I said, put these posts into a table. I always ask for a table. Otherwise, it gives you a stream of consciousness that is hard to understand. And make sure you add in a column with an image prompt that I can use to accompany the post. Right. So this is powerful stuff. Because what it's actually going to show me now is a prompt, the reason for why you would use that copy in your post, and it will give you the image thing. So here you go. Here's highlight the heritage and organic USP. Well, there you go. There's some copy. And you want an image? Okay, well, consider vintage sepia. And you can see, meet the 5 master brewers, showcasing the brewing team's authority, local organic ingredient storytelling, price justification, community engagement, and nostalgia. So it's giving you reasons for doing the post. And, you know, maybe for some of us, and, you know, I talk from a position here of being that person. Sometimes I just really struggle to come up with new compelling copy to continue to do social media engagement. This can help. This can help frame it, and you can build this out into a comprehensive content plan. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. I'm going to use this tool called Leonardo.ai. It's free. You can get a paid for version of it, but the free version is pretty good. So we're going to look at this vintage sepia. So I want a stock photo, and I basically want it to be a square image, and I want you to do 4 generations, and I want you to use the Keynote XL model. And they're the images it produced, which potentially could be used. Now, I could go back into this and correct that. I could take that image and take it into Ideogram or take it into Playground and make further adjustments to it. Or I could stick with what it is, or I could adjust the prompt itself and ask for more information and generate more images and generate more and more and more. Now, with Leonardo, you're limited to how many free images you can generate, but the fact remains, they are available for you to try for free. And if it's a useful tool for you, then go for it. So let's have a look at another one. This one is local organic ingredient storytelling. And there's our prompt, the barley field. And if any of you know Reading, I don't, not to the extent that I ought to, tell me if this is the skyline for Reading. We're going to use the stock photo thing again, all the same settings, and they're the 4 images it's produced. Now, I don't know. Is this what Reading looks like? No, I don't think it. Chloe's shaking her head saying, no, there's no skyscrapers in Reading. Okay, so there are limitations on this kind of thing. So there is a willing suspension of disbelief sometimes with that. Okay, gang. So we've actually covered quite a lot in here. And what I want to do is just do a very quick roundup. And then what I want to do is then open up for a quick Q&A as well. So let's do a quick roundup. So my roundup is as follows. It's my personal belief that you use AI as a collaborative tool. Don't use a one shot. Don't ask it one question and take it at face value, the answer it gives. All right. Use a reasoning tool, ask for more information, give it more information, have a discussion. And then after a reasonable number of ollies, you're probably going to get the copy that you really need or the image that you really need. Although I showed you examples earlier of using how AI is enabled in lots of people's mobile phones, the latest iteration of the Apple iPhone, the latest Samsung have, and Google Pixel phones have AI built in at the operating level. In my humble opinion, if you're not just using it as an assistant, If you're serious about this, then it's best used on a desktop device, not on a mobile device. The mobile versions of all of these AI tools are not as good. The end result is pretty good, but you get less features in there. So you're missing out on this stuff. And actually, it takes quite a while. And remember this, I showed you lots of images where there were wonky eyes and 5 fingers and things like that. It's a lot harder to spot that stuff when you're looking at it on a mobile phone. A lot easier to see it when it's on a big screen. So please do consider that. Most tools are free, but paid is always better. And if you can, do please support those small businesses. We had an attendee, Mark, who very kindly created Coggle, which is an AI tool to create mind maps. And I've just put that on there. It's changed slightly. We've got a few new things in there since it was last done, but nonetheless, useful all the same. So check out Coggle. I'm going to stop the recording at this point and want to thank you for staying with me, and we'll open up for questions.